Welcome to the deep dive, where we take complex source material and extract the actionable essential knowledge. Today, we're looking at something a little different. Not a policy paper, not a history book, but a comprehensive intellectual framework. We are diving into the Alaska Studies curriculum.
Right?
And our mission today is, well, it's to steal the toolkit. We want to really identify and understand the core systems thinking principles that are being used here. Because the system, it's explicitly designed to position learners as, high-level researchers, analysts, and decision makers who are tackling these massive future challenges.
And what's so fascinating here is that the curriculum, it immediately skips that whole memorize this date phase.
Right.
It forces students to apply knowledge to these chaotic, often near-future problem-solving scenarios.
So it's all about application.
It's all about application. This framework is centered entirely on civic reasoning, gathering evidence, understanding the power of indigenous knowledge systems, and resolving these high-stakes, real-world conflicts where there just is no easy answer.
So they're teaching them how to design Alaska's future, not just recall its past.
Exactly.
I find that so compelling, this use of future scenarios. These high-stakes simulations, they force students to apply history and governance rules to a chaotic future they might actually face.
They do.
Okay, so let's start with the groundwork. Unit 1, Land, Identity, and Adaptation.
This is the foundation. It's about understanding Alaska as a place where geography, climate, and culture don't just coexist. They fuse.
So you're not just learning about mountains and rivers in isolation.
No, not at all. You start by mapping the physical systems, major landforms, climate zones, but the intellectual jump happens immediately.
How so?
You have to connect that physical reality to cultural regions and indigenous foundations. Students are required to analyze the deep relationship between land, language, their worldview, seasonal round,
Subsistence practices.
all of it. If you try to separate the physical landscape from the cultural history, you fail the unit. It's that simple.
And you can see that integration in the performance tasks. They aren't just asking for a map description.
Yeah.
They're being asked to complete a place, identity, and belonging study. The core idea is place shapes identity, values, and belonging.
And they have to back it up. Students must analyze place-based stories and traditions, reflecting on those deep land-culture relationships, and they're explicitly told to avoid generalizing or just relying on personal opinion.
So interpretations have to be grounded in evidence.
Right. Whether that's maps, oral histories, interviews, whatever, it has to be evidence-based.
And to show how quickly those foundations are stressed, we need to look at the first big tests they face.
We do. This is the Unit 1 problem-solving scenario. It's known as Settlement 6A, Regional Situation Briefing 2082. This is the first test of a total systems failure.
I find it fascinating that the curriculum uses this kind of existential identity conflict as a key challenge right out of the gate. What does it actually look like in the Settlement 6A brief?
Well, it looks like this. The settlement is on land that has shifted, and shifted rapidly, from stable tundra to what they call a transitional biome.
Okay, so the ground itself is changing.
It is. Their infrastructure is literally warping because the foundations were designed for permafrost
Right.
that, well, it no longer exists in the same state.
And then you add the human element.
Exactly. The population is made up of residents who converged there from multiple former regions, all after their original homelands were deemed uninhabitable.
So you have people living in a physically failing environment, and their traditional cultural practices, like, say, relying on specific marine resources, they just don't align with their new location.
The land literally moved out from under their cultural feet. That's a great way to put it.
So what's the core question they have to answer?
The core challenge presented to these youth analysts is this. Should the settlement seek a singular kind of enforced identity for civic coherence and stability? Or do the diverse regional identities need to be preserved even if they conflict with the current ecological realities?
That is a massive challenge.
It is. And the insight here is that future systems must account for accelerating environmental and cultural divergence at the same time.
When you have a problem with that many variables, geography, failing infrastructure, cultural divergence, how do you even start analyzing it? You can't just react.
And that brings us to the most powerful tool in this entire framework.
Yeah.
This is the key takeaway for you, the listener. It's the structured, 6-step problem-solving guide.
Yep.
The curriculum demands that students, when they're facing a chaotic scenario like Settlement 6A, use this framework. It's how they move from just observation to strategic, disciplined intervention.
It's built for situations without a single correct answer.
Precisely. The scenarios themselves aren't the lesson. The structured approach to analyzing them is.
And that approach carries right into the next units.
It does. Unit 2, which focuses on contact, power, and worldviews. The goal here is to analyze colonization, resistance, resilience, and importantly, cultural continuity.
And to do that, you'd need a multi-perspective analysis of historical events, right? Like Russian America or the U.S. Purchase.
Right, and evaluating source bias,
Yeah.
focusing on indigenous resistance and survival, not just accepting conquest narratives.
But again, they don't just write an essay about it.
No, they test that historical knowledge with the Unit 2 scenario, North Star Station. And they do it by throwing the concept of historical contact into the year 2087.
Tell me about that scenario.
Okay, so the situation involves a powerful global organization, the Helix Group. They arrive uninvited with an autonomous research vessel, the Peregrine.
Uninvited.
Completely. The vessel broadcasts a request for access to land, waters, and data. And it treats the North Star residents with, and this is a quote, polite efficiency, but not curiosity, not respect, and certainly not consent.
Wow. And they deploy drones over cultural sites that aren't even on public maps.
That's the one. So the Youth Council has to propose a path forward. The curriculum analyst notes that the underlying problem isn't really the technology or even the resource demand.
It's about the power imbalance.
It's fundamentally about power imbalance and the total lack of consent. It's the collision between an extractive worldview, one that sees land and data as resources to be taken,
Versus a relational, place-based worldview.
where the land imposes obligations, not opportunities.
Exactly.
That use of sci-fi is just brilliant. It proves that the dynamics of colonization and sovereignty are timeless. You're talking about the same fundamental conflict, just with different tech.
And that collision of worldviews drives the next unit, Unit 3, Navigating Overlapping Authority.
This is all about civic literacy, digging into tribal, local, state, federal structures, including these foundational, really complex laws like NCSA and NLMTA.
Right, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act and the Alaska National Interest Lands Conservation Act. It's about understanding who governs what and where all the boundaries blur, especially when it comes to land and resources.
And these laws, while essential, are also inherently messy, and they're subject to reinterpretation in a changing environment. Which brings us to the scenario for this unit, Meridian Strait in 2094, a perfect case study in jurisdictional conflict.
What's the core tension here?
One local community decides to restrict external research teams, arguing they have precedence in their traditional territories.
Citing ANCSA principles and their own traditional authority.
Right, but the Northern Administrative Grid, or the NAG, which is this powerful centralized body, claims this violates corridor-wide marine monitoring agreements.
So it's local autonomy versus a centralized agreement.
Played out over vital environmental data. But what's the real human cost of that ambiguity?
That's the question.
The youth surveys in the scenario reveal widespread civic disengagement. There's this fatigue because, as one quote puts it, the rules change depending on the island, the week, or the weather.
That must be incredibly frustrating. It's like trying to navigate a legal labyrinth where the floor plans shift with the tide.
And that is exactly why that 6-step guide is so crucial. It's the anchor in all this chaos.
Yeah.
The goal is to enforce intellectual discipline when your emotional response is just frustration or paralysis.
Okay, let's break that methodology down step by step, because this is the toolkit that you, the listener, can apply to basically any complex problem.
Right.
Step 1 sounds simple, but I think it's often ignored when emotions are running high.
It is the most foundational. Understand the situation. You have to describe what is happening, who is involved, and note all the constraints: time, geography, systems. And the key instruction here is critical. Focus purely on accuracy, not opinion.
You have to know what you're dealing with before you can judge it.
Absolutely. If you rush step 1, you end up just treating symptoms, not the actual cause.
Okay, what follows that initial assessment?
Step 2 is to identify challenges. Here, you brainstorm divergent challenges or tensions across multiple domains: geography, culture, economics, governance. The focus is on surfacing the complexity.
So you're forcing yourself to see the problem from 6 different angles, not just the one that's most obvious.
Exactly. Then you get to the synthesis. Step 3. Select the underlying problem. This is where the real analysis happens.
This sounds like the hardest part.
It can be. You must choose one root issue that is more than just a surface conflict and demonstrably drives the other challenges.
So for Settlement 6A, the surface conflict is the warped foundation.
Right. But the underlying problem is that the infrastructure standard is mismatched to the rapidly evolving biome. You have to justify that choice with evidence from the scenario. Strong reasoning is more important than agreement.
That framing determines the success of the whole plan. So once you have that root problem, how do you move to action?
Step 4 is generate possible solutions. Brainstorm multiple realistic solutions that acknowledge the constraints. You are specifically told not to assume perfect conditions or unlimited resources.
The goal is divergent thinking, not perfection.
Precisely, because complex problems always require multiple options.
And step 5 is the quality control, right? Where you bring those options back down to earth.
It is. It's the critical evaluation. Develop criteria and evaluate solutions. You use real-world limits, cost, time and labor, impact on people, fairness, sustainability to create a rubric. This is how you justify choosing the best, well-justified solution.
And you have to acknowledge the trade-offs.
You must acknowledge trade-offs or downsides, because no good solution to a complex problem is ever perfect.
Okay, so a focus on disciplined trade-off analysis. And finally, the last mile execution.
Step 6. Create an action plan using SMART goals. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
And the goal here isn't to guarantee success.
You can't control the year 2098. The goal is to demonstrate clear, realistic thinking that moves a theoretical solution into a concrete, executable project.
That whole process, it shifts the entire learning experience from studying the past to designing the future with real rigor. And speaking of the future, Unit 4 brings us to contemporary issues and resilience.
This unit focuses on those high-stakes issues: resource management, climate change impacts, the dynamics between rural and urban centers. They are synthesizing everything they've learned so far
To form informed, responsible views on energy, infrastructure, community resilience.
Right. And the final scenario, the Northern Network Resource Briefing 2098, demonstrates this convergence of climate instability and infrastructure failure.
So the Northern Network is an alliance, right? Coordinating resource exchange, energy, food, transport across a bunch of interdependent communities.
A classic centralized system. And that system breaks down catastrophically. 3 principal energy nodes fail because of distinct, simultaneous climate-related events: storms, geomagnetic disturbances, unseasonal heat.
All at once.
All at once. This causes highly uneven pressure, localized rationing. So communities start running their own local microgrids, which causes a partial detachment from the network.
So the immediate problem is the infrastructure failing, but the underlying problem is really about systemic trust and centralization.
That's it. You have declining trust in the network's centralized data models because they no longer reflect local, on-the-ground conditions.
And that leads to political divergence.
Centralization versus local autonomy. And this is the future we're preparing them for. The youth surveys in that scenario sum it up perfectly. They note that the systems are built for the world we used to have, not the one we live in now.
Wow.
The course culminates by reinforcing that the students are not just mastering facts. They are practicing modern skill systems thinking, problem framing, collaboration, responsible tech use, all rooted in cultural accuracy and real-world constraints.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? We looked at how this comprehensive framework demands this incredibly disciplined analysis. You start with geography, you move through history and sovereignty, and then you apply this robust 6-step methodology to challenges that span decades and worldviews.
I think the core lesson is synthesis. These complex challenges, whether it's infrastructure failure in the Northern Network, cultural rights at North Star Station, or jurisdictional chaos in Meridian Strait, they can't be analyzed as isolated events.
They have to be seen as the result of interconnected systems.
Land, culture, governance, economics.
Hmm.
The framework demands accuracy first, divergent thinking second, and then rigorous evidence-based justification third. It replaces reaction with strategic intervention.
Absolutely. This is the difference between knowing a fact and knowing how to solve a massive problem that has no easy answer. We looked at how geography and culture collide in these scenarios, how the rules of governance fall apart under environmental stress. So consider a complex problem in your professional or civic life right now, one you might usually just react to or maybe oversimplify. What specific underlying problem would you choose to focus on if you had to commit to a 6-step SMART goal action plan, knowing there's no perfect solution? How would you justify that choice? That's your next deep dive.